Welcome to Jewish Calls His Mother. I'm your host, Sadia, and this is my mother, Ima. How are you doing, Ima?
Hello, my sweetheart. Shall we let the audience in on my great technological accomplishment?
Yes. Let me just do an intro first. So, we've had technical difficulties for the past day and a half trying to figure out what's wrong with my mother's Zoom account. My mother, miracles upon miracles, figured it out all by herself and troubleshooted the problem herself and resolved the issue herself. So, we are all very proud of my mother.
Revealed miracles will never cease.
Yes, which brings us to the topic of today, which is the future. What does the future hold?
Back to the future.
Back to the future. Everyone's talking about all sorts of ideas and thought process. People are a little timid. They don't know what the future's going to bring. We are probably on the brink of nuclear war, and big corporations are sucking the life out of everything, and unions are trying to help with society, but it's just not working out the way we wanted to. But whatever, life goes on. So the question is what will happen in the future?
Well, quite honestly, this business about Putin's threatening nuclear war, knowing Russian technology, probably the worst that would happen is that he would send a nuclear bomb up, and it would either hit the North Pole and kill a bunch of polar bears, or it'll go up, turn around, come right back down, and hit Moscow.
Well, the weird thing about that is there's this concept. I think its acronym is MAD, M-A-D, for mutually assured destruction, where if there ever was, God forbid, a nuclear war, there would be such a terrible amount of death throughout the entire world that it would be total global destruction. That it's not worth it. So that's kind of how the whole thing with nuclear weapons normally would work. That's why, in a way, it's I think Putin's bluffing with his nuclear war deal. I mean, he's freaking out and saying, I don't care, I'm gonna pull the button, blah 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 blah. But it's like all the people in Russia don't want this war anymore. They're trying to leave. The people who are in the military, they're doing a terrible job. And more than that, half of them it's riddled with war crimes and whatnot. I don't know, I'm hopeful. I always have that dream where it's you wake up and it just so happens that you're stuck in some time warp and it's 500 years into the future and what's going to happen. I just feel like everything's just going to be more digital, more hands-free, and we're still going to find ourselves to be busy, but it's just we're going to find more ways to make our life more convenient.
Probably.
Instant food. Yeah. Well, I remember you telling me stories about when the microwave was made. Invented. Everyone had this idea that it's just going to be instant food and it's just going to be the future. And it's it developed into another way to cook food, but it's not necessarily the only way. And even more than that, people in society now still old-fashioned, cooking concepts, like having a cast iron skillet and a potbelly stove is ooh, it's amazing. It's so rustic. So I think about how hard we try to go in the future.
Well, people in general, I think when you go on YouTube, you see all these recipes being demonstrated. I think people still enjoy hands-on cooking.
Yeah, that's what people were talking about when it came to digital digital books and digital magazines. Everyone was thinking oh, it's going to be the future. No, books are going to be non-existent anymore. No one's going to get magazines anymore. And magazines did dwindle, but books did not. I think with magazines is because they're supposed to be supposed to be updated at all times, where it's oh, this is today's magazine, and the whole concept is yesterday's newspaper is worthless. And because you get the media so quickly nowadays, there's almost no reason for a quick magazine, because for a quick article you'd read in a magazine, you've read it 5 times already from 5 different news sites this morning. So that's where the issue with magazines kind of have their hiccup, where they have to kind of get their stuff together. Maybe try to find some kind of medium.
People still getting a magazine and looking at the pictures and just reading, casually reading the articles themselves. As Jews, books will always be part of our culture because we have Shabbos and Yontif where we don't use electronics.
Yeah.
So we will always be using books and magazines and like Chayenu. Everybody likes the Chayenu because you're learning your Chumash, your Tanya, your Tehillim, and everything is like right there. Instead of, I remember before Chayenu came out, every night I wanted to learn the Chitas, the Chumash, Tanya, and Tehillim, and I had to drag out like 3 big heavy books. Look up the Chumash Parsha, look up the Tanya Parsha, and here with Chayenu, it has Rambam, it has the mitzvah of the day, it has everything like totally right there
Well,
for you.
That's what I was talking about. Like in general, things are just gonna become more and more convenient.
I think so, but when you talked about like the future, I'm old enough to remember when I was in high school in the 1960s, how they were making all these predictions for the future for like 1995. As a matter of fact, remember your father had the Science magazine. I don't know if you remember seeing it, where it was from like 1964, 65, and it showed what society is gonna be like in 1995, and it showed this like businessman with a briefcase and a jetpack on his back, like flying through the air on the way to work. And how many of those things came true? Very few of them. I mean, I remember the scientist who invented the jetpack, and I remember him showing a film, being on television, then showing a film demonstrating it. And everybody thought, yes, that the jetpack is going to be the mode of transportation for the future. Everyone's going to have one, and we're all going to be flying through the air. Well, it didn't turn out like that, but what it did turn out being useful for was the spacewalks.
Interesting.
It was very, very convenient for the astronauts to use them for spacewalks, and going up there and like fixing satellites. Because with the jetpack, you don't have to rely on being attached to the spaceship, having a lifeline to the spaceship. You have your jetpack, and you can be more independent of the spaceship.
Yeah, but there is like this jetpack kind of thing nowadays that people are using, but it's kind of dangerous. The problem with jetpacks and people now that have like workable jetpacks that aren't like really gas focused, it's just the danger of it all. It's just the real issue is the danger and like the destruction that it causes when it's around an area, because basic physics would tell you, we're being pushed down, I think, by 9.85 I think grams of weight per second is this gravity. So gravity's pushing down, and then but the gravity below you is pushing you up. So what you're doing is you have to be able to push yourself up more and more and more, but then the force is coming down, and because that force is going to be affecting the whole surrounding. So if someone has a jetpack and they're going through an area where there's a bunch of people, or there's like a bunch of canvas, a bunch of canvas overhangs, there could be some damage and whatnot that's going to have to, like, if and when it gets popular, you're going to have to regulate it really and keep it together.
Now, I think a couple things that I've read about might be interesting for the future. They already have it's a car that can convert to a boat.
Yeah, that's been around for forever. I think Lyndon B. Johnson had one.
So I don't know why they're not more popular though, because
there are.
That'd be great. I mean, but how come everybody doesn't have one?
Because you aren't in the boondocks of Florida. Go to the boondocks of Florida. People have that kind of vehicle. Or have you ever seen a vehicle with a really long muffler on top in the front of the car?
No, I haven't.
Okay, when you're in Florida, keep in mind those are the ones that can also go underwater.
Ooh.
Yes, certain ones can go underwater.
With an underwater, but they can convert to a boat.
Yeah,
or a small submarine.
They can. Well, it depends. Again, like a lot of times people buy Jeeps and they soup them up. So when they soup them up, they're able to handle like 3-4 feet of water and be fine? Or are they able to be submerged and then have another part of the vehicle to actually work as a boat? So it depends. There's like all these different
Mhm.
stuff. So like if you have a car, that also works as a boat, and all you see are cars outside, you know, some of them could be boats. And the way to look for it is look at the muffler, and if there's also like there's not. Am I saying the muffler? I don't know really what I'm talking about. But but basically, next time you look for vehicles that have like some kind of pipe coming out from the front of the car by the hood on the side, and it goes up. And those are
But
ones
you,
that can handle water.
but you know what I mean? Like, why why doesn't everybody have one? I mean, this is new technology. Why doesn't, I mean, it's not really new technology. You said it's been developed over, like years ago it was developed. Why doesn't everybody have one?
I guess it's just, I would say cost and convenience are the two major factors. It's probably expensive, and it's also unnecessary. Like, for instance, I knew a guy at Morgan. He was very well-to-do guy, and he lived in Annapolis. And what he would do on the weekends was he would take his boat from Annapolis all the way to Baltimore City and go to the harbor. I never heard anybody do that, but like knowing him, I knew that. So there probably is a big community of people that do it. We just aren't affiliated with those kind of people.
Mhm.
That's what I'm saying. It's like you're saying, like, oh, why don't people do it? Like people probably do. It's like a community that like we just don't know of.
So knows when he would take his, basically he would basically commute to college
Yeah.
by boat, and then when he was during the week when he would go to class, he would live on his boat.
Sometimes I guess, but that's not really what I was getting at. I said on the weekends he went
Uh-huh.
from Annapolis to Baltimore City.
Uh-huh.
That's what I said. On the weekends
Um,
he went from Annapolis to Baltimore City, and he would travel via boat. And a lot of people, I guess, do that. They travel via boat. And that's the other thing, is that there's so many other, I guess, futuristic concepts. Like if you would go to maybe San Francisco, where it's like the tech, Silicon Valley maybe, where it's like it's the tech mecca of the world, and you see all this new innovative stuff, you know, you'd probably ask yourself, well, why don't we have that in Baltimore City? Well, probably because there's not enough people there that are educated, are aware of it. The government officials don't really have an interest or are uninformed of the benefits.
mhm.
It's all about what the personal benefits of an environment. Like I saw when I was in Israel in 2017, I saw an ATM that you could get money off of Bitcoin. You can take money, get into Bitcoin through the ATM and withdraw money. And that was the first time in my life that I saw it. I'm like, oh my gosh. But then again, last year I saw a Bitcoin ATM at the gas station on Northern Parkway.
Oh my gosh, that's
So it's just
amazing.
like, so it's just different
Mhm.
pieces, different parts. Like you could probably go to Denmark or Norway, um, or Sweden or whatever, and they have a lot of very interesting ingenuity when it comes to like architecture and construction and whatnot. But like you then might go to Israel and see a different version of it or necessity of it. It's kind of why like the internet is so important, because we're all slowly coming together and everyone's starting to like exchange ideas more quickly than ever before.
Well, I remember when I was in Switzerland
Hmm.
seeing computerized buses
What year
and
were you in Switzerland again?
in 1973.
Thank you. All right.
That's back in 1973. And the story of what happened to me, I think I told you that I got lost in downtown Zurich at 1 o'clock in the morning.
I don't think you have. I think I don't know the story.
Okay, well, anyway, I got lost in Zurich, downtown
Hmm.
Zurich, 1 o'clock in the morning, and this totally deserted street. Didn't know where I was going, didn't know what to do. And a computerized bus, a driverless bus, pulls up in front of me and the doors open. So I figured, okay, God, that's obviously a sign. So I got into the bus, and the bus takes me down to the taxi depot where I was
Hmm.
able to get a taxi to take me back to the youth hostel where I was staying. So I mentioned this to a woman who was born and raised in Switzerland, and she told me that they have people like who are behind the cameras in these control centers that control these computerized buses. And he probably, whoever it was, saw me on a camera, like just like walking up and down the street, not quite knowing what to do. And they pressed the button and sent me a computerized bus to pick me up.
You know what's so funny about that too? In Japan, they have all these like locations um, for like of these maps and directions and whatnot. And tourists like always get amused by this. You know, you touch a button, press a button, and you're expecting like a machine or robot to come out. No, a person just sitting there opens up like a compartment and they starts like helping you. You know, like there's a button that says help, and you click on it. You're expecting like, oh, it's going to be a computerized machine saying, "What do you need help for?" Nope, just a regular person pops out and starts like talking and asks you if you need help and directs you to where you need to go.
Wait, is this on the phone? Is this on your
No,
iPhone? No.
no, no. In Japan,
Ah.
by the train stations, where you have a
Oh,
giant map and you don't know what's going on and you need help,
uh-huh.
there's a help button. You click that help button, and what happens is there's a guy there that is sitting there inside the whole compartment, and
Oh
he
my
comes out
gosh.
and he helps you.
That is
Yes,
that is amazing. You're right. I
yes,
would expect a robot.
yeah. Well, and what's so funny, you know, is because like Japan, what's even sort of funny and ironic is that Japan's like such a hubble of like ingenuity. Like look at like the robotics and things like that.
So anyway, we're talking about futuristic things. I was reading an article about sending a man to Mars, and the article says the problem is not actually sending an astronaut to Mars. The problem is bringing that person back. They said because there's a area where you're free of the Earth and the Moon's gravitational pull, but you still haven't gotten into the gravitational pull of Mars yet. So you've got this like area where it's very where you need a tremendous amount of thrust to get through so you don't get blown out into outer space somewhere uncontrollably. And they said right now our rockets, which are run on fossil fuel, can't get to that speed, which is necessary to get. They call it Largus, to get through this Largus area. They said they're working on what's called a laser rocket, a laser engine. That a laser engine would be able to get to that tremendous amount of speed to get through that area.
Interesting. I think I've heard about the laser, but I think I mean, they've landed multiple robots on Mars. Um, so I don't think that that's really a problem.
The
Uh,
problem is getting them back. Is like getting that
oh,
thrust.
well, no,
That like if you blow up. In other words, if you to blast off from Mars, to get the amount of speed of thrust that you would need to get through that Largus area, um, our fossil fuel rockets can't get to that speed. That's why they're working on a laser engine that could get that speed to blast off with that much thrust to get through that area.
yes. So that's what's been going down with Elon Musk, what he's been doing, because he's been focusing on trying to get recyclable rockets that can land, launch, and come back as well. And once that is actually like perfected, transportation in the world is going to change because you're no longer going to need airplanes for long distance travel. And hopefully what that ingenuity will include is traveling back and forth from Mars doing research.
So in other words, you're talking about the rocket plane?
No, it's not a rocket. It's a
Uh-huh.
rocket. No, that's not what I said.
I know.
What I said
Mhm.
was that the rockets that are being. So have you been paying attention to the news lately with the recyclable rockets based off of George Bezos and Elon Musk and a few other rich people trying to do a space race?
Not quite. I haven't read too many articles about them.
Okay.
I'm too busy working, trying to earn money.
Sure. So,
I have a cat to support.
oh, for sure, 100%. You have to take care of the cat. So what's happening is, um, the there's a space race that's going on right now where they're trying to have this competition between a few companies of making recyclable, reusable rockets that can go up to the moon or go up to Mars or go up into outer space and then safely come back down. And it'll be hopefully get to a point where the average person can travel to the moon, to Mars, to somewhere around the world, and if it's somewhere in the, of course, in shorter periods of time.
So in other words, I know I've heard about it. That's what I meant by when I said rocket plane. I meant, in other words, instead of taking a plane that would circumvent the circumference of the Earth, instead you're in a rocket and it's an ellipse. So it goes up and it goes down, which could conceivably get us from New York to Hong Kong in what, 15 minutes, something like that.
Yes, that's what's going on. And also, I mean, it wasn't for the war. That's also kind of what's going on with they've been trying to make a speed rail going from London to all the way to New York City, cutting through, Europe, Russia, into America, into Canada and whatnot.
So you mean, so the speed rail would go over the North Pole and through Canada? Is that what they're looking at?
Kinda. Um,
Because I know a friend of ours was reading about this big convention they had of civil engineers.
yeah,
And one of the things that they're looking at for the future is an actual transatlantic bridge. Basically, it would be like if you wanted to go to Europe, you could drive all the way up, the east coast of Canada to like the very top of Canada, like probably it would be the top where you have Greenland and Iceland, and then you have what's your Scandinavian countries, what would be there, Denmark.
yeah,
And so that's where they're considering putting a transatlantic bridge so that people could conceivably, actually drive their cars all the way up Canada and over the Atlantic Ocean at that very top area, which is not more narrow, and then could drive then through Europe. They would have your car with you. You can just casually drive through Europe and visit all sorts of countries, and then drive back instead of having to spend thousands of dollars on plane fare.
yeah. Well, that's what they were saying, that instead of cars, um, they would do a train. That's what I was talking about. Do you understand?
Yeah, yes. Actually, they could probably put a train, build a bridge over the Bering Strait, and go from Russia to Alaska and then down.
Out of curiosity, did you think of like what the future would be like when you were a kid?
Trying to think back. When I thought of the future, I thought of you think of basically, the kind of house you're going to live in, who you're going to marry, that type of thing. I thought I would live in one of these, like, type of, you see them every now, you see them in, like these home decoration magazines or these home architecture magazines where it's one of these houses that's mostly made of glass,
Oh, I
and
love those.
and it's in the woods. It's in this real nice, like, country or wood area in the mountains or something. I thought I would live in one of those. Instead, I wound up
Interesting.
living in a semi-detached house that was built in 1948.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Um, did Tati ever talk about the future? What he thinks the future is going to be like?
Well, we would get these calls sometimes from people doing surveys. And whenever they would ask me or your father, where do you picture yourself 10 years from now?
Yeah.
Your father would always say 6 feet under, and I would say a rich widow.
Jeez Louise.
Your father had like a ghoulish sense of humor.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a kind of sensitive, ghoulish humor situation. Oh my gosh. It's pretty funny. Yeah. Because like, I don't know, like I think the future is hopeful. I think you said something like the Bob Treppy was saying that the future is very hopeful, that there's not like the shittier part of life is kind of over, so to speak. That it's all about bringing hope into this world.
Yeah, yeah. But the Rebbe said that the Rebbe wasn't such a big believer in the word Gog and Magog. He
Yeah,
said
that's what I was talking about.
yeah, he said that the Messianic age is going to come in a very gradual, natural way, very peaceful, gradual, and natural way.
Yeah.
Like not like a Big Bang type thing, big dramatic type thing. But let me see the future. I keep thinking about the future. What I don't understand about the United States is that when you look at Europe, I mean, they have like, for instance, in Scandinavia, they have these computerized buses. They have they even have computerized trash collection. The trucks, they have computerized trash collection trucks that come around. And I don't understand why the United States, one of the richest countries in the world, is so far behind.
Well, how about look at their healthcare? That's my point. Like, there's so much ingenuity in other countries. Like, a lot of times people get upset. They think it's probably just a bunch of lobbyists for other personal, self-interest companies that don't want to be put out of business. Like the Zing company is the main lobbyist for having the penny, still be in existence. You know, it's because the penny is mostly made out of zinc. It's this. There's a lot of reasons, and until it gets to a point where it's like people are screaming for it, nothing's gonna happen. Or some rich guy is bored and wants to switch things up a little bit. That's really what I see. It's either rich guys being bored or poor people getting really upset, and those are the two options. I've noticed. Maybe a little bit of like you know self. I don't know, people that want to make the world a better place, but that's just like few and far between. I've noticed.
Well, quite honestly, I mean, everybody's talking about um, solar energy and wind energy. That when people talk about the future, they're talking about eventually there not being a need or any like phasing out fossil fuels. And I don't see that. I think fossil fuels and coal is still going to be used, but in a more efficient, cleaner way. I still think
Um,
fossil fuels is still going to play a big role in the future.
I don't know. I think fossil fuels are slowly going to get faded away, at least in Western culture, or maybe first world culture, so to speak. Um, the damage that fossil fuels are causing is really mostly done in places like China and India, where they're really trying to like push into, I don't know if they're first world, like if they're first world class or they're trying to get into it, because India has a lot of places where they like don't even have like working toilets, or they just started having working toilets, and China has that same problem. But they're booming, and the thing is, they're using a lot of fossil fuels because they have no
Mm-hmm.
other options. But I think when it comes to places like, I think it's again, they're Norwegian countries. One of them actually uses the way they fuel the country is through garbage, and they buy the garbage from the other country next to it. I think it's Norway buys the garbage from Sweden or something like that. And so they have these ideas in Europe, and it works very well in Europe because it's a very Europe, the European countries, they're all very tiny countries that can be controlled, and you can hyper focus on things. The problem with America, I've noticed, is that because it's so spread out, it's so diverse, it's such a melting pot that to get everybody on the same track takes a miracle, if not 10, 15, 20, 60 years, you know?
And I once heard Jimmy Carter's Secretary of State was what's his name? Oh gosh, I can see his face now. I think he wasn't he wasn't a native born American citizen. I think he was originally the Polish or Russian. But
Cyrus
Reznikov
Roberts
or
Vance
something?
Sr.
No, no,
Cyrus,
no.
that's the Jimmy Carter
That
Secretary of State.
that's it. Oh, I'm trying to think
There
who
was Henry
he was.
Kissinger, Roswell Gilpatrick, C. Douglas Dillon.
Hmm. I'm trying to think who it was that they were interviewing, and he said that Americans traditionally are not innovators. Americans are more reactors. I mean, initiators. That's what he was talking about, like as far as like world politics are concerned, or world events. That Americans are not. He said they're not initiators; they're reactors. Like when you think, for instance, like, hey, True Wake, we were the first country to have like a successful revolutionary war and to overthrow a monarchy. The idea of a monarchy and setting up a democratic republic, but it took a while. I mean, it's like the Americans tried to. When you read about the history of the Revolutionary War, there were many, many years that they kind of like put up with what England was doing to them and put up with it and put up with it, put up with it and tried to work with it and put up with it finally to the point where they got pushed to the brink where they couldn't take it anymore. And then they reacted.
Yeah. Yeah.
And World War II, I mean, World War II in Europe started like 1939, and the United States didn't enter it till we were attacked at Pearl Harbor in December 1941. And same thing, it took a major attack for us finally to say, okay, that's it. We were pushed to and that's again, getting pushed to the brink. We're finally, okay, we got to do something now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what's gonna, keep us going. All right, we're out of time. Thank you so much, Ema. Way to go with figuring out your computer problem. I love you. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
Have a great Shabbos, honey. Love you. Mwah.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. You can find us on YouTube and Facebook at Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. I know you would like it, and my mother would too.